welcome to this online version of my Geographical Association Conference 2020 session entitled Making Geography Matter During DofE Expeditions. So during this session I'm going to look at two different elements. I'm going to look at how I make geography really matter during the expedition training, and then how I make geography matter during the expedition itself. When looking at the AQA GCSE specification, which is the one we follow at school, and in particular the cartographic skills that we need to develop in students, I could see the potential to incorporate most of them into the DofE training. Now some, like four-figure grid references, gradients and distances, I'd always incorporated, but there are others that I thought with a little more thought I could introduce, and this presentation will focus on these elements. I introduced different scales of maps early on in the training session, in fact in training session number 1. And I used Digimap for schools for most of my DofE training as the students are familiar with it. I'll start the first session by looking at our school location in relation to the first campsite area that we use for the bronze practice expeditions. And we use different scales of map to investigate where we're camping and how to actually get there. And we ask students to think about how they might travel to the expedition location, which roads they might take and where the area is near. After a bit of group work on this, they then produce a how to get there instruction sheet to take home, and they also photograph it for evidence. So this forms the first part of the participants' expedition training on map skills, and as you can see from the sheet I've included, it's got some gaps for the students to fill in, and then a longer section where they design their own instruction sheets for their family. This is then photographed and then inserted into eDofE for evidence of their expedition training. When we discuss how far distance is on a map, I again use Digimap as a tool. I begin by showing them the school field, an area that they are familiar with. We then discuss how far it is from the fence to the opposite fence, and students form a line in the classroom in distance order. We then use Digimaps to measure the distance to see who was the closest, and the closest get a prize. We then go out into the field to look at that distance, as when walking, students often find it difficult to appreciate how far away they are from a location. And we then walk that distance without rucksacks, and they time how long it takes, and that's a gentle stroll. And then we do the same activity again, but with full packs on their backs to see how long it would take them to walk that distance with a full rucksack on. And again, there's a worksheet that accompanies that activity. The other thing that they do is from one fence to the other, they take a photograph with their phones, and then as a little bit of homework, they print off that photograph and stick it on their worksheet. This is then again uploaded to eDofE as evidence. Our location is not the mountainous of counties, but we still have some hills, and sometimes this can come as a bit of a surprise or shock to the students as they walk through the rolling countryside. So to introduce the concept of contours to our DofE students, as not all of them are going to be studying geography, we make 3D contour maps, models of the countryside that they are walking through. So this is a really good example to talk about why maps need to show height, why it matters, and also when designing the 3D contour models, we also consider the way height is represented by our models. Is it a fair representation, or has it been exaggerated? Does it look like a hill, a slope, or does it look like a mountain? So it's a really good way to discuss with the students the role of contour lines, spot heights, and also to try and spot them as they plan their routes. When we talk to our Year 11 students for their Silver Award training, we tend to take this a step further. The students often plan to walk along the Seven Sisters in the South Downs, and so we make use of satellite imagery and terrain maps from ArcGIS to discuss the relief of the land. We ask the students to measure the distance on their OS maps and to estimate how long it would take them. We then show them the aerial photographs and see if they want to change their timings at all. Then we look at the terrain maps on ArcGIS and again ask them if they want to change them. And then we show them a 3D view representation of the Seven Sisters. So we used the scenes section of ArcGIS to show the students the 3D view of the Seven Sisters, and we then used the measurement tool to show how much of a difference in height there is. And as you can see in the example here, there is about a 44-metre difference between the bottom of the slope and the top of the slope. So that really gets the students involved in how hard that would be, the gradient of it as well, and whether it would then affect how quick or slowly they would be walking. So far I've discussed how we're trying to make geography matter in the expedition training section, but we also try to make geography matter as part of the project or activity time while on the expedition as well. And in the following slides I'll just discuss some of the ideas that we've had to try and make geography matter while they're out and about. So on the practice expedition, what we like to get the student to do is to spot certain features, physical features or human features, and to take photographs of them. So in this case we give them small little maps like the one you can see on the right hand side of the fold, and we ask them to, when they pass it, to take a photograph of it, and it just links in what they're seeing on the ground and what they're actually seeing on the map. And if we do this in a practice, hopefully when they come to plan their final assessment routes, they'll be able to recognise from the map what they might see in real life when they're walking, and so maybe not get lost as much. When talking to students about footpaths, we often stress the importance that geography plays, and in particular farms and farmers. So when they're walking, they might come across footpaths that the farmer maintains really well, as you can see from the photograph on the left. However, they might also witness footpaths that look like the one on the right, and there is actually a footpath dead bang in the middle of that photograph. And this one was at around about my chest height, and I'm around about 5'11". And it really gives the students, when we show these photographs, a real appreciation that the geography that they're walking through does matter. And we also talk about how that might look differently at different times of the year as well. So we talk about the seasonal aspects of the geography that they're walking through, and the farming year. The session today focused on how we can really make geography matter when it comes to DofE expeditions. And the tools that I use most to make that happen: maps, both paper-based and digital. Students need to have a grasp of both, in my opinion. We use Digimaps a lot for the planning of routes, the measuring of routes, also looking at the locations themselves. ArcGIS we use particularly with the Year 11s at the silver level, looking at the landscape, the terrain, the 3D versions as well. They're particularly useful. I also use photographs a lot when we're training. It's really important that I show the students where they're going to be walking. Some of these students don't walk in the countryside that often. They're used to walking to and from school, and that's an urban setting. So it's really important that I do show them what a footpath looks like at different times of the year, what a farmhouse might look like, or a farm might look like, because again, it's something that they might not have experienced before. And I feel that if we do that using photographs, then they'll be more reassured when they're in the location, and they'll be more confident. And we also use our school field as well, so it's something familiar to them. But we also use it to practice, so to practice distances, to practice how far it takes to walk, and also to see how far something looks from a distance as well. So I hope you found today's session useful. If you'd like any of the materials, the worksheets, etc., then please just feel free to contact me using the details that you can find on the GA's Secondary Phase Committee webpage.